Doctor's article, System Flow, Technical Flow. Zhou Qiaoben was an undergraduate graduate from a third-rate medical school in China, but his family was poor and he couldn't continue his studies. He planned to find a township hospital to live in after graduation, but suddenly received the inheritance of an unclaimed aunt from across the ocean. A private clinic located at 23 Powell Street in San Francisco. After deducting inheritance tax and paying off various debts, I couldn't even pay my salary. All the people in the clinic have left, except for 2 white nurses and twins who never leave. Various bills are pouring in, and Zhou Qiao also wants to leave. It's better to lie flat in China. Borrowing alcohol to drown his sorrows, he had a hangover all night. Unexpectedly, he ended up rolling around with 2 white nurses. Zhou Qiao was shocked to find out that he had opened the clinic in the wrong way. Keywords of the novel. I open a clinic in the United States without pop-ups. I open a clinic in the United States. Download the complete set of TXT, and read the latest chapters on opening a clinic in the United States. Chapter 1. Clinic Inheritance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Clinic Inheritance Blue Star. Parallel World. USA, California, San Francisco. Let's go, let's go, let's all go. Zhou Qiao watched as one medical staff after another left the clinic, feeling dejected. He was originally an undergraduate graduate from a third-rate medical school in China, but his family was poor and he couldn't continue his studies. He planned to find a township hospital to live in after graduation, but during the graduation season, he suddenly received the inheritance of a long-lost aunt from across the ocean. A private clinic located at 23 Powell Street in San Francisco. This clinic is actually quite large, with 3 floors in total. Nurse's desk, consultation room, treatment room, disposal room, and infusion room on the first floor. The operating room on the second floor is equipped with a shoe changing room, shower room, and 3 wards with a total of 6 beds. On the third floor, there are dormitories for my aunt and 2 white nurses, as well as several miscellaneous rooms. There are public bathrooms on each floor, elevators between the first and second floors, and bathrooms on the second and third floors. Although sparrows are small and have all 5 internal organs, they are a bit rudimentary. But it also far exceeded Zhou Qiao's expectations. Compared to most private small clinics in China. However, after completing his aunt's funeral and various tedious procedures to inherit the estate, he found that after paying the inheritance tax, paying various bills, and paying off various debts, the clinic account only had a few $100s, and he couldn't even pay his salary. Without money, all the people in the clinic left. Originally, there were 12 or 3 people, but now there are only 3 left. Zhou Qiao, Elena, and Ava. Why don't you leave? Zhou Qiao said in unfamiliar English. Although he was a third-rate student in college, at least he passed the C2.4 in his sophomore year and the C2.6 in his junior year. His spoken English was stiff and poor, and when he first came to the United States, he had to use translation software. However, after staying for a few days, he gradually became able to understand. Although what is said is not standard enough, others can still understand it, and simple communication is unobstructed. It has to be said that having a language environment is quite important. Joe, you forgot, this is our home. Where can we go? Joe, are you driving us away? Elena and Eva have blonde hair and blue eyes, slender figures, graceful curves, and crystal clear skin that can squeeze water. At the age of 18 or 19, it is a time of youthful vigor. They did not attend college, and in their final year of vocational high school, after receiving professional nursing training, they came to the clinic to work as nurses. More importantly, they are twins. Standing together, Zhou Qiao is a bit confused about which one is which. And their voices are all equally captivating, soft. Now, both of them looked pitifully at Zhou Qiao like little dogs, causing him to feel a slight jolt in his mind. What, such a lovely girl is definitely sought after by thousands of people on the university campus, but there are actually two here, Auntie. Not willing to leave yet. Oh, I remember. It seems that my aunts will mention that you were her adopted daughter from a young age, and you have permanent residency in the third-floor room. Zhou Qiao rubbed her temples and said, I'm sorry, I've been too busy these days and I've been confused. It's okay, Zhou. Just don't drive us away. Upon hearing Zhou Qiao remember, Elena and Eva were immediately happy, with smiles like flowers. Especially Elena, she secretly cast a seductive glance at Zhou Qiao. Although we met for a short time, Elena already felt a bit in love at first sight. She likes to sneak a few glances at Zhou Qiao whenever she has something to do. I feel that this boy from the mysterious East has a unique attraction compared to American boys, making her unable to sleep every night. It's just that Zhou Qiao has been too busy these days and knows nothing. Zhou Qiao looked at these two white little sisters and couldn't help but think of Snow White. It's really white, so white that it's dazzling. He was really tired. As soon as he left the campus, he arrived alone on the other side of the ocean and had to organize a funeral. Although he had the help of President Zhang from Chinatown and a few Chinese villagers, it was really not easy. San Francisco is not large and has a population of approximately 800,000, but it has nearly a quarter of Chinese people. It's getting late, Zhou Qiao looked at the clock hanging in the lobby on the first floor. It was almost time for dinner and asked, What do you have for dinner tonight? There is actually a small kitchen on the third floor, but it is basically idle because my aunt doesn't cook and only eats fast food. Two white nurses said, I'll have a cheeseburger and French fries, and I'll have another cup of coffee. I don't want coffee, I'll have a cup of black tea. Zhou Qiao frowned and smiled, no wonder you have such a good figure. Black tea and coffee are both for digestion and fat removal. Elena and Eva shrugged, equally cute and soft, with sweet smiles. Zhou Qiao looked at it several times, but couldn't distinguish which one was which. Previously, they mentioned it when introducing themselves. Zhou Qiao went to a hamburger restaurant called In and Out not far outside, bought 3 fast foods, and brought them back. The 3 of them were eating when a postman suddenly delivered a letter. Zhou Qiao opened it and looked at it, his head suddenly swollen. It turned out to be a bill sent by a nearby medical testing company. The clinic does not have a laboratory, so patients need to undergo blood and urine routine tests, as well as X-ray, CT, MRI, and other imaging examinations. They can all go there for testing and monthly settlement. Last month it was over $10,000. This is probably a missed fish, the other party issued the bill late. Oh my goodness. Zhou Qiao really wants to die, the clinic's account is only a few $100s now, okay. I can't even eat fast food for a few days, okay. If Zhou Qiao remembers correctly, when handling the inheritance, the staff also specifically told him that although this clinic is his aunt's private property, sacred and inviolable, and now belongs to him, he still needs to pay property tax every year. Otherwise, the government has the right to confiscate and auction the property. The property tax rate in California is relatively low, only 1.25%, but this 3-story clinic is worth at least $8 million, which means it must pay $100,000 in full and on time every year. This bill will be received approximately from the end of September to early October, and payment will be made in 2 installments. The first payment is usually made before November, and there will be a 10% fine if payment is made after December 10th. The second payment usually ends in April, and if it exceeds April 10th, there will also be a 10% fine. And this property tax will also change every year with the housing price and tax rate, usually only rising and not falling. It's crazy. It's almost August now. Zhou Qiao is a bit eager to go back and lie down. How great it is to be in a township hospital in China. Being close to home and able to take care of the elderly parents. How spacious the houses in the countryside are. There's no tax yet. However, he only spoke to his old father on the phone yesterday. His father choked up and reminded him to take good care of his aunt's property in the United States. That's what Auntie worked hard all her life to achieve, and she can't be defeated by you. We can't be taken away by the Americans. The old father felt very sorry for his aunt. In fact, Zhou Qiao was not very clear about the conflicts back then, because he was still relatively young at that time. The old father said that before his aunt left home, she hugged him every day and liked to tease him the most, but Zhou Qiao didn't remember. The reason why my aunt ran away from home and never came back, nor did she contact her family, was because something particularly tragic happened. Back then, my aunt was in her prime and found a boyfriend, but she was a second married woman who was quite old and had a dragging oil bottle. When Zhou Qiao's grandparents found out, they naturally disagreed, and the whole family started arguing. Strike a mandarin duck with a stick, forced to break up. After all, it is the soft aunt who cannot resist the grandfather and grandmother who are forced by death. However, the man was obsessed with his aunt and couldn't bear the blow. On the way back, he was lost and died in a car accident. In her grief and anger, the aunt broke with her family and ran away. Grandparents scolded, "Don't come back after you leave." Auntie said firmly, "Don't come back, don't come back. I will never come back in my lifetime." Then, the aunt disappeared. Who would have thought that so many years had passed, and that a business had been established in a foreign land, with such a small and medium-sized clinic? Not only did his aunt leave the clinic for him, but before making a will, she even applied for a green card for him by sponsoring immigration. Perhaps, as his father told him, it was true that his aunt loved him the most when he was a child. Auntie also had a car accident and died unexpectedly. She ended her life in the same way as her former lover. Thinking of this, Zhou Qiao suddenly felt a surge of hair all over his body. Sleeping in bed, my aunt died unexpectedly. The police said it wasn't suicide, nor was it homicide. How could they have made a will in advance and even processed a guarantee for immigration for me? New book upload, seeking collection, seeking recommendation tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. System Activation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 System Activation. Two little nurses looked at him in surprise, and one of them couldn't help but ask softly, "Joe, what's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell?" Zhou Qiao waved his hand and said, "I'm fine, I just remembered my aunt's passing, it's a bit sad." "Anna must have gone to heaven, so we don't have to be too sad," Elena comforted. She saw Zhou Qiao's hard work and responsibility these days and felt a little sorry for him. However, her affectionate feelings were ignored by Zhou Qiao. "What a nutcracker!" Elena secretly roast. Her emerald green eyes twirled lightly, and the water shimmered, scheming. On a night in the beautiful country, Zhou Qiao actually doesn't dare to go out very much. It will be protruding. The two little nurses are also very obedient, both staying busy in the consultation room. Although the clinic is closed these days, what needs to be sorted still needs to be sorted out. Now that everyone has left, only the two of them are left. Not to mention anything else, just the hygiene of the 3 floors will kill them. Zhou Qiao, on the other hand, was a bit worried that the clinic would eventually open, but he had not yet obtained a professional physician qualification certificate in the United States. Clinical doctors in the United States are divided into 2 levels. Resident doctors and attending doctors. The attending doctor is for life. This is different from in China, where there are various professional titles available. In addition to resident physicians and attending physicians, there are also deputy chief physicians and chief physicians, as well as associate professors and professors in the teaching department. Among them, associate professors are divided into 5.7 levels, full professors are divided into 1.4 levels, and there is also a top-level honorary title. Academician. As for intern doctors, whether in China or abroad, they cannot be considered formal doctors. 2 young nurses are doing hygiene, while Zhou Qiao is busy in the office, organizing clinic information and familiarizing himself with the business. He took a look and found that the main source of income for the clinic is to treat patients with colds, fever, and diarrhea, or to deal with simple external injuries. Then there are follow-up visits for patients over 35 years old, screening for blood lipids, blood pressure, blood sugar, obesity, smoking cessation, and other health consultations. It's just that San Francisco is an international metropolis with too many private clinics and too much competition. Ant's clinic seems to have average competitiveness. Some simple small surgeries can be performed by the Ant, such as the first simple appendectomy, the first simple hernia repair, abortion, circumcision, removal of foreign bodies on the body surface, nevus nucleus, nevus fistula surgery, etc. However, complex surgeries are not enough. However, as an international metropolis, San Francisco, although a bit larger, is exceptionally bustling. A few kilometers away, there is the University of California Medical Center, also known as the University of California, San Francisco affiliated hospital, which ranks 5th globally. Everything that can't be done will be sent over there. In the past few months, my aunt personally performed the surgery in rented advanced operating rooms and equipment from the University of California Medical Center, performing a heart stent surgery on a patient. However, such big business is not common, and it is rare to encounter it a few times a year. Due to the temporary closure of the clinic and the closed door, there were no patients coming tonight. Time rushed by and soon it was 11 o'clock in the evening. 2 little nurses have already gone to bed. Zhou Qiao arrived on the 3rd floor, hurriedly took a shower, then went to his aunt's funeral and lit 3 incense sticks before returning to his bedroom. Auntie's original room has not been moved for the time being. Zhou Qiao lives in a tidy-up miscellaneous room, which is relatively small, but facing the street and by the window, living there is still relatively comfortable. There is no separate bathroom, and there is only one public bathroom on the 3rd floor. This is because the house is a bit old, the design does not conform to the current trend, and the aunt did not carry out any renovations. There is no bathtub in the bathroom, only a shower. There are many children's toiletries inside, and even the underwear that Elena and Eva changed into are sometimes hung on hooks or thrown into dirty clothes baskets without taking them away. Therefore, Zhou Qiao takes a shower very quickly every time and doesn't dare to stay inside for too long. After waiting for a long time, I am afraid that others may have some bad ideas. 2 little nurses live at the other end of the corridor, while Zhou Qiao lives next to the bathroom. At that time, I chose this room mainly because it was convenient to use the toilet at night. Like 2 little nurses, they have to touch a long distance at night to come over. Then, Zhou Qiao was sleeping soundly when he suddenly heard a thump in the nearby bathroom, accompanied by a slight scream. Zhou Qiao woke up in an instant and quickly went to investigate. The bathroom light was on, and Zhou Qiao asked, "Is it Elena or Ava? What's wrong?" A voice came from inside, whether it was Elena or Eva. I fell, twisted one foot, and couldn't get up. The bathroom door is open, come in and help me. Zhou Qiao gently twisted the handle, and sure enough, the door opened. Then he saw the white nurse wearing a loose nightgown, sitting on the ground with a swollen left ankle. I may have broken a bone or dislocated it. Elena exclaimed in surprise. She originally only wanted to lightly fall and let Zhou Qiao come to save her, and then the 2 of them might have some sparks. But to her surprise, they really twisted their feet. Perhaps the ground is too slippery. What she never expected was that she twisted so much and suddenly swelled up in a circle. It looks a bit scary. Zhou Qiao squatted forward, carefully examined, and even lightly pressed with her fingers. Elena couldn't help but whimper. Zhou Qiao looked up and saw a vacuum in her loose nightgown, causing hot blood to surge up and almost nosebleeds. He quickly calmed down and said, "This is not a dislocation, nor is it a fracture. Those 2 situations would be much more serious than yours. Your condition is likely to be a muscle sprain or a slight bone fracture. I will help you apply ice, put on a stent, and go to that medical testing company early tomorrow morning for a CT scan. Ankle fracture or dislocation, it's not like this. Especially dislocations can be even more terrifying. It's not a matter of swelling, the shape of the bone can be seen through the skin. Because the flesh and blood on the ankles and feet are relatively thin. Some cases of excessive force and open dislocation not only result in soft tissue injuries and massive bleeding, but even bones can be poked out. The white and dense bones and broken tendons can be seen, with a bloody appearance. Zhou Qiao thought to himself, it's really inconvenient without X-rays and CT scans in the clinic. However, these two devices are too expensive to afford temporarily. In addition, buying equipment requires hiring people to operate and maintain it, which is also a significant expense. Why not use a ready-made commercial imaging center outside? Elena felt a little better in her heart. She couldn't walk or even get up, so Zhou Qiao thought for a moment and decided to pick her up horizontally and walk towards his room. What are you doing? Elena pretended to be angry, but the corners of her mouth had already slightly curled up. She felt dizzy, and the pain in her ankle seemed to have eased. Heart said it would be even better if it weren't hurt. Zhou Qiao placed the white nurse on the bed and said, "It's too far to go downstairs. You wait here and don't move around. I'll go downstairs to get ice cubes, gauze, and a stent." Before leaving, he couldn't help but turn back and ask, "By the way, are you Elena or Ava?" "I'm Elena." Zhou Qiao nodded and resolutely turned around to go out. Elena glanced at Zhou Qiao's back and thought to herself, this brother is quite handsome, careful and gentle. She hugged her knee and couldn't help but moan again because her ankle really hurt. Quickly, Zhou Qiao brought gauze, ice, and a stent, and even brought a painkiller. Elena's ankle is swollen so thick, it's actually a hematoma. Due to muscle sprains, ruptured blood vessels, and massive internal bleeding in a short period of time, ice compress should be used to stop bleeding within 24 hours, with each application lasting no more than 20 minutes. Heat compress should be changed after 24.48 hours. If you apply hot compress now, it will only worsen the bleeding. In the quiet of the night, in the narrow room, Zhou Qiao knelt by the bed and gently helped Elena stop bleeding, bandage her, and even fed her a painkiller. "But, Zhou, I still hurt so much." Elena couldn't help but frown. Zhou Qiao smiled and said, "Medicine doesn't work so quickly. If you want to relieve it, you can lift your feet and let blood flow back to the base of your thighs." "Will you lift your feet?" Elena thought to herself, this is what you asked me to lift. Suddenly, I couldn't help but want to see Zhou Qiao's reaction for a while. Elena is also a nurse, and she knows that lifting her leg can relieve pain, so she immediately lifted her long, snow-white legs up. With this lift, the hem of the nightgown immediately slid down, revealing endless beauty. Beautiful beyond measure, only there should be in the sky. Because Elena is actually a vacuum. Zhou Qiao. Elena was youthful and beautiful, with a graceful figure and snow-white skin that captivated the soul. Zhou Qiao was momentarily confused and full of vitality, feeling dizzy and impulsive. She was like a starving tiger pouncing on a sheep. Elena struggles. Zhou Qiao suddenly woke up and felt that he couldn't make any mistakes. He stood up and wanted to escape. Suddenly, the little hand behind him pulled him back. An hour later, Elena lay in bed drowsy and fell asleep, with a smile on her lips and a very sweet sleep. She just got injured and is really exhausted. Zhou Qiao hugged her, closed his eyes, but didn't sleep. He stared at the virtual panel and golden font that appeared in his mind, shocked. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Putting Ducks on the Shelf. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Putting Ducks on the Shelf, LSP Medical System Activation. Reward Medical Knowledge Points +4, reward beginner with a big gift pack. Name: Zhou Qiao. Age: 23, current level. Resident doctor, current girlfriend's favorability rating: 80, note. Out of 100, bonus. ×2, may I ask the host if they can immediately receive the beginner gift pack? Zhou Qiao silently said to himself, claim it. Quickly, a brightly packaged treasure box popped out, automatically opening, endless petals spreading, and a certificate appeared in my mind. American Professional Physician Qualification Certificate. Zhou Qiao was shocked. This system is really considerate. What's missing is something. Can it become a physical object? Zhou Qiao murmured in her heart. Soon, as he wished, the certificate became a physical object and landed on the bed beside him. Surprisingly, it's true. The texture is very good. It is obvious that this system is not deceiving. However, when Zhou Qiao opened it, it was just a resident doctor. Resident doctors are already licensed doctors with certain prescription rights and can perform minor surgeries. However, for resident physicians who have just graduated, large hospitals will not give you the opportunity to prescribe medication alone, nor will they let you go to the operating table alone. But it is led by senior resident doctors and carried out under the guidance of higher-level physicians. However, Zhou Qiao's clinic is at his own discretion, and as long as he has the level and ability, it can be carried out. Zhou Qiao couldn't help but ask the system, do you have a certificate of attending physician? If so, it would be a one-time solution and save a lot of trouble. System: yes. You need to exchange 200 medical points. Zhou Qiao silently calculated for a moment and suddenly felt that he might have a short life. Can this person live over 30 years old? This deceitful system. If it weren't for the fact that you are a system and may have various magical functions, I wouldn't want you anymore. Zhou Qiao carefully thought about the panel and found that it has an auxiliary diagnostic function, which requires deducting a certain amount of medical knowledge points each time it is used. Also, there is a redemption button. What can I redeem? Looking at the European and American girl with soft, shiny, and dazzling white skin in her arms, Zhou Qiao couldn't help but shift his gaze to her high and swollen ankle. He felt a pang of heartache and quickly asked the system in his mind, is there a medication that can accelerate healing, such as the one that can be restored to its original state in a few hours? System: there are many. The cheapest one is a healing ointment, which only requires one patch and can fully recover within 4 hours. How many medical knowledge points? 5 o'clock. Zhou Qiao. Isn't this deceitful? Can it be cheaper? It's not that he can't bear it, he only has 4 on his account. Modification failed. Exceeded permission range. Zhou Qiao looked at the beautiful woman in his arms and fell into contemplation. Zhou Qiao overwhelmed her with enthusiasm and apologized to herself, in order for you to recover as soon as possible, please be patient. 2 hours later, the golden font came to mind again. On Zhou Qiao's account, the total value of medical records is displayed as 12. Zhou Qiao was delighted and immediately exchanged a patch of ointment for Elena. After receiving it, I opened it and smelled it, which was very refreshing and light. There was no pungent smell like dog skin ointment, and the color was also very light, off-white. I quickly pasted it on Elena. Elena muttered in a daze, I really don't want it anymore. If I come again, I'll die. She didn't know that her ankle was accelerating healing. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Elena woke up. Recalling last night's events, Elena's fair and pretty face couldn't help but blush with enchanting waves. I need to hurry back to my own room, otherwise Ava wouldn't be ashamed to see me coming out of Joe's room later. But my ankle hurts and I can't walk, why don't you let Joe hold me back? Be quiet, Eva shouldn't notice. She instinctively looked at her ankle, but was shocked to find that the swelling had completely subsided and there was no pain at all. However, the bandage wrapped around the ankle was missing, and the bracket was also thrown aside, but a strange adhesive tape was applied. Are you awake? Zhou Qiao sat up and asked her. Elena nodded and pointed to the plaster on her ankle, asking, Zhou, did you help me put it on after I fell asleep? Zhou Qiao replied, yes, this is the drop injury ointment I brought from China. It works very well. Here, I'll help you tear it open and check the effect. Zhou Qiao went to gently tear off the ointment. People who have applied plaster know that there is a lot of sweat and hair on the body, and some areas have even more lush body hair. If it is not scraped clean before application, it will not hurt when applied, but when it is peeled off, it can be deadly. Zhou Qiao didn't prepare a skin for Elena last night because her skin was really good. Except for her hair, eyebrows, and eyelashes, all other parts of her body were invisible. Tearing off the ointment, revealing a smooth and slender ankle, very sexy. The hematoma has been completely removed, without any residual blood stasis. The damage inside has been repaired, but it cannot be seen. It's really amazing. Elena couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. She tried on her ankle and found nothing wrong, so she quickly jumped out of bed and bent down to pick up the nightgown on the floor and put it on. Zhou Qiao squinted his eyes as he looked. Zhou, I'm going back. Elena looked back and smiled sweetly. Zhou Qiao bounced up and rushed over to embrace her, feeling reluctant to let go. No need. It's already dawn and you'll be discovered. Elena whispered. She thought Zhou Qiao wanted something else. Footsteps could be heard outside, as if Eva had entered the bathroom and started washing up. Zhou Qiao and Elena immediately fell silent, and then Elena tiptoed out and sneaked into her room. There are still 7 medical knowledge points left. If you want to exchange for the certificate of the attending doctor, it will probably take at least a month. The task is heavy and the road is long. Zhou Qiao tugged at his chin, making himself more conscious. How about opening the clinic first? We can't starve to death. A resident doctor is a licensed resident doctor at least. If the patient asks about only one resident doctor's license, it is likely to affect business. But Zhou Qiao really has no choice, he can't borrow money anymore. My family is poor and unable to support me. Although the Chinese here have some friends, they are all friends of my aunt. I am not very familiar with them and cannot speak up to them. Even if they speak, they may not be willing to borrow. Even if I am willing to borrow, can I borrow enough to pay so many bills, and is there an upcoming huge property tax? Seeking collections, seeking recommended tickets, end of this chapter. Chapter 4. First patient. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. First patient. After much thought, Zhou Qiao thinks it's better to start a business and make money. At present, only this road is more reliable and can be put together. Besides, don't you still have a system to rely on? At least I graduated from a medical college with a bachelor's degree, and I can't handle a serious illness. But isn't it just a matter of prescribing some medicine for a common cold and fever? Also, are 2 beautiful white little sisters, Elena and Eva, willing to let them wander on the streets and be bullied? As my own brother, I have to take care of them. Recalling Elena's charm last night, Zhou Qiao was immediately full of energy. Breakfast is a sandwich with milk, 1 serving per person, bought at a fast food restaurant outside. Zhou Qiao glanced at Elena, full of energy, and then announced loudly that it would open on time at 8 o'clock. This time, he finally distinguished between Elena and Eva. Because the remaining red charm on Elena's face has not completely disappeared. In the midst of eye movements, there is a wave of tenderness and sweetness that comes from the air. When their eyes collided, they both intentionally or unintentionally avoided Eva, not letting her notice. What? We're going to open. Eva exclaimed in surprise, then couldn't help but worry and said, Zhou, are you okay? You know, all the doctors have left, and only Zhou is left as a newcomer. As far as she knows, Zhou Qiao has just graduated from college and has not interned yet, so her clinical experience is negligible. How can a man say no? Elena chuckled and made another face at Zhou Qiao, carrying Eva behind her back. Elena is certainly very confident, because yesterday Zhou Qiao helped her cure quite well, which can be considered miraculous. Zhou, I support you. You're the best. Elena smiled sweetly, with a bright smile and sparkling teeth, and 2 dimples on her face, full of the sunshine and vitality of European and American girls. Well, we'll go open the door and take down the closed sign later. Zhou Qiao said. Ava. The minority obeys the majority, and Zhou Qiao is the inheritor of the clinic. Besides, she also knows that the clinic is indeed short of money and cannot be opened without it. Quickly, after breakfast, Zhou Qiao opened the door with 2 beautiful white girls. Iris Clinic, back again. However, after waiting for over an hour, there were still no patients coming to the door. Elena brought in a cup of coffee and placed it on Zhou Qiao's table. Thank you. Zhou Qiao was stunned for a moment and once again did not recognize it. Because it has been too long, the residual redness on the face has disappeared. Elena looked outside and saw that Ava was not there. She shook her slender and fair wrist at him and whispered in his ear, "From now on, when you see this colorful bracelet, you will know it's me." Undoubtedly, it was Elena who gave him a kiss on her lips. How could Ava possibly do this? Zhou Qiao looked approving and nodded. That's so thoughtful. I know I can't easily distinguish between you. Looking at Elena's graceful figure, Zhou Qiao couldn't help but move up and down. Don't make a fuss. Zhou Qiao. Has anyone called to make an appointment? Usually, Americans like to make appointments by phone when seeking medical treatment. In fact, this is similar in China now. Some highly popular experts may not be able to get an appointment even a month in advance and need to seek help from scalpers. Elena shrugged and said, "I'm sorry, not really." Zhou Qiao. Is just a casual question. If his aunt is here, perhaps there will be many old customers who will make appointments. Did they change him? While the 2 were frowning, Ava's voice came from outside. Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Weston. Mr. Weston, what's wrong with you? Is it a stomachache? Ava saw Mr. Weston holding his stomach in pain, bending over, and stumbled in with the help of Mrs. Weston. She quickly took him to Zhou Qiao's consultation room. Mrs. Weston said, "Yes, little Eva Walid. He has a rather urgent illness today, and I don't know which doctor is sitting there." Zhou Qiao and Elena exchanged a glance and immediately welcomed them out. Usually, doctors are not so proactive. They just sit in the consultation room and wait, but who made them the first patient today? It's about the good fortune of opening. Zhou Qiao saw a couple in their 60s. Mr. Weston was relatively thin and long, while Mrs. Weston was quite short and sturdy. Quickly greeting, good morning, good morning. Today is my appointment." Mr. and Mrs. Weston looked up and couldn't help but be taken aback. "Are you Anna's nephew? Where are the other doctors?" Mrs. Weston asked. Zhou Qiao shrugged apologetically and said, "The doctors all left yesterday, but I asked myself if my medical skills were okay. If Mr. and Mrs. Weston don't mind, let me diagnose for you." When he was flipping through the medical records last night, he saw the information about this couple, and it was indeed a nearby resident who was a loyal customer of the Iris Clinic. "Elena, make Mrs. Weston a cup of coffee. Mr. Weston is feeling unwell and not suitable for drinking at the moment," said Zhou Qiao. Then, he turned to the Weston couple and said, "I'm sorry, I've been busy lately and forgot to prepare other drinks. Please take a seat in the consultation room, both of you." The Weston couple hesitated a bit, but Mr. Weston was in excruciating pain and went in. "Mr. Weston, can you tell me the process and symptoms of the disease, such as when it started and what are the discomforts?" Zhou Qiao asked. This type of private clinic focuses on returning customers in the surrounding area. So when seeking medical treatment, you won't be in a hurry like in China. As soon as you arrive, you will be immediately asked to undergo tests such as blood tests and CT scans. Instead, doctors and patients will use more consultation and chat to enhance their relationship. If it weren't for the urgent condition, Zhou Qiao would still want to talk about family matters with the other party. Mr. Weston shook his head in pain, indicating that he didn't want to speak. Mrs. Weston said from the side, probably since yesterday afternoon, Walid has been feeling a bit unwell, his stomach is uncomfortable, he is anorexic, and he didn't eat much for yesterday's dinner. This morning, his body temperature went up a bit, and he took a measurement at home, which was 101.12 degrees. Then he took a bite of breakfast and immediately vomited. Then he didn't drink much water. In general, a thermometer in the United States that exceeds 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit is considered a fever, 1 degree Celsius is equivalent to 33.8 degrees Fahrenheit, and 101.12 degrees Fahrenheit is equivalent to 38.4 degrees Celsius. Zhou Qiaoben said it's okay, it's just a low fever. Additionally, Mr. Weston has been dripping water for over 10 hours. Probably where is the pain? Zhou Qiao walked over and asked. Mr. Weston pointed to his lower right abdomen. Zhou Qiao pondered slightly and said, you lie flat on the examination table here, and I'll do a finger pressure test for you. Due to Mrs. Weston's difficulty in helping her up, Zhou Qiao stepped forward and gave a hand. Elena and Eva were watching Zhou Qiao's diagnosis from the side. There are no other patients in the clinic, and the hygiene was done yesterday. They don't have anything to be busy with either. After Mr. Weston lay down, Zhou Qiao lightly pressed on Mr. Weston's McDonald's spot. With a slight press, Mr. Weston's forehead veins burst out and he couldn't help but shout, "It hurts." Zhou Qiao quickly withdrew his hand and said, "This is a very obvious acute appendicitis attack that requires surgical resection. The Mies point is located in the abdomen, which is the projection of the appendix. During acute appendicitis, the Mies point tenderness is very obvious." As a medical school graduate, Zhou Qiao is well aware of this. The diagnosis should be fine. However, necessary preoperative examinations must definitely be arranged. When he said it lightly, he gave people unparalleled confidence, but in reality, he was playing drums deep inside, extremely uneasy. Damn it, he hasn't had surgery for appendicitis yet, and he hasn't even been on the operating table, okay. Just opened, just like this big fish. Isn't it supposed to be a cold and fever? End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Beginner Specialization Master Perfect. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Beginner Specialization Master Perfect Appendectomy Surgery sounds simple and basic, and many attending physicians and deputy chief physicians in China disdain it, let alone more advanced chief physicians. But in practical operation, it's really difficult. Those with less experience may not be able to find it. I can't even find my appendix, why do I have to cut it? Everything is wrong, such as cutting a woman's fallopian tube, which can be a major medical accident. Moreover, most appendectomy surgeries nowadays use laparoscopy. Traditional open appendectomy is only a first-level surgery, but with laparoscopy, it is a third-level surgery. The difficulty has increased several times. Is he a newly graduated undergraduate student coming to undergo level 3 surgery? Isn't it funny that there are no higher-level doctors to guide us? So Zhou Qiao was particularly hesitant, was it to make this money? Or directly suggest the other party to refer to the University of California Medical Center or other private clinics? But isn't that a bad reputation? Afterwards, when Mr. and Mrs. Weston chatted with others about this matter, they would say, Anna's nephew from the Iris Clinic is really amazing. He can't even perform a simple appendicitis surgery. Once the name of the weak chicken spreads and spreads throughout the surrounding area, will this clinic continue to operate in the future? Will there still be patients coming to our doorstep? So Zhou Qiao's mind turned to the system in his mind as soon as he thought about it. Is there a system for exchanging appendectomy skills? The system immediately replied, there are 4 levels. Beginner, Specialization, Master, and Perfect. The exchange points are 5, 10, 15, and 30 respectively. Which one do you want? Zhou Qiao. Isn't that nonsense? I only have 7 o'clock on my account, which one else can I take? However, at 7 o'clock, you can only exchange for entry-level ones, which is not safe enough. The probability of medical accidents is still relatively high. Zhou Qiao dare not joke about the patient's health. He inherited this clinic, although it was for the purpose of profiting from Americans, but it must always be worthy of conscience. He glanced at Elena beside him and thought to himself, fortunately, there's a little baby here. At least specialization should be no problem. If you put in more effort, exchanging for a master-level appendectomy would be just enough. However, if it's perfect, it's probably too late. Mr. Weston has acute appendicitis, it's best to have the surgery done today during the day. The patient's condition is not too bad and does not require special preparation. And Mr. Weston hasn't eaten much since last night. Elena caught Zhou Qiao's gaze and couldn't help but liver skip a beat, her heart vaguely becoming expectant. She just felt surprised, why is Zhou so eager? Looking sick here, still thinking about that. It's a bit unorthodox. Her breathing became slightly rapid, and her twin sister Ava looked at her suspiciously. With Elena's little baby, Zhou Qiao was full of confidence. He immediately helped Mr. Weston up and sat him down in his seat, then confidently said to Mr. and Mrs. Weston. You know, I'm from China. In large hospitals in China, I have undergone many surgeries with experienced professors. Surgery for acute appendicitis like yours is just a small case. Please rest assured that I can guarantee the quality of the surgery. Regardless of whether it exists or not, let's first blow it out. Anyway, it's a long way away and they don't know the contact information of their university teachers, so they can't verify it. Mr. and Mrs. Weston hesitated a bit. The coffee here tastes good. Mrs. Weston picked up the coffee Elena had placed on the table before, took a soft sip, and commented. Zhou Qiaoxin said, this is a change of topic. Foreigners always like to come up with this kind of thing. But still following the other person, he said, it's just regular black coffee, but Elena has a good brewing technique. A ray of light flashed through Elena's watery blue eyes, making her heart inevitably sweet. Zhou was praising me. She quickly added, Mrs. Weston, Anna had a follow-up with me before and I know your blood sugar is a bit high. So this time, I chose black coffee and specially added sweeteners. It is a pure natural stevia extract called stevial sugar, which is not metabolized by the human body. It is currently very popular. Because the business of Iris Clinic also includes some health consultations related to weight loss, Zhou Qiao's aunt has previously developed some solutions. Collaborating with suppliers, recommending relevant sugar substitutes to customers in need, and obtaining a certain percentage of commission is also one of the economic sources for the clinic. Zhou Qiao secretly gave a thumbs up. He appreciates Elena's attention to detail. Divine assist. Oh, thank you. No wonder I think the sweetness this time is very special, very refreshing, said Mrs. Weston. Then he glanced at Mr. Weston and whispered, Walid, do you think we should have surgery here? Mr. Weston pondered for a moment, then suddenly laughed, his throat a bit hoarse, but the laughter was hearty. Actually, I shouldn't get sick at this time because there are too many medical accidents from July to August every year. Zhou Qiao blushed with sweat. Is this implying that one's level is low? Because every July to August, a large number of new doctors are on duty. He happens to be one of this crowd. In fact, Mr. Weston is not joking, this is the result of an investigation by relevant U.S. agencies. Indeed, during this time of year, there is a high incidence of medical accidents. However, I still choose to believe in you, for Anna's sake. Mr. Weston's smile stopped and he said solemnly, we are also quite sad about Anna's departure. We hope you can pick yourself up soon and make her clinic stronger and bigger. Thank you very much, Zhou Qiaoben said, agreeing to the surgery. Next, you need to have a blood routine, an ultrasound, and if you are willing, you can also have a CT scan to rule out other diseases. If my diagnosis is correct, as soon as we receive the results, we will start the surgery immediately. Although it is urgent, necessary inspections are still needed. Mr. and Mrs. Weston also nodded. This is much more efficient than other hospitals and clinics. Then, Zhou Qiao asked Elena to give Mr. Weston a pain-relieving injection, and he began arranging for testing, printing letters, and signing. Due to the urgency of the condition, expedited testing was arranged, as indicated in the letter. After receiving the injection, Zhou Qiao handed over the letter to the other party and asked them to go to a commercial testing center about 800 meters outside for inspection. And remind the other party to abstain from food and water before surgery. That place has signed a monthly settlement agreement with the Iris Clinic, which is still valid. Mr. Weston does not need to pay, and only needs to pay the Iris Clinic's bill in the end. Although it was only 800 meters away, Mr. Weston was feeling unwell, so Mrs. Weston still drove there. After getting on the car, Mrs. Weston suddenly felt a little regretful and said to her husband, "Actually, I'm a bit worried. Joe is too young and I don't know if his skills are good. He's 8 or 9 years younger than our son. Is that really okay? Collect and ask for tickets. Seeking investment." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Good Girl. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Good Girl. Mr. Weston remained silent, but still said, "Just here. Young Dr. Zhou is quite efficient, and I don't know how long it will take to go elsewhere. He looks quite professional, and Elena is also very careful. Also, have you noticed that Dr. Zhou and Anna look very similar? After all, it's my nephew." Mrs. Weston drove slowly, not daring to drive too rough. "I heard that this clinic's financial situation is not good. Anna has helped us before, and it's time for us to repay her. Oh, poor Anna, leaving this world so suddenly." Mr. and Mrs. Weston nervously went for a check. Up, while at the Iris Clinic, Zhou Qiao quickly separated Eva. "Eva, go prepare the operating room, count the instruments and consumables, adjust the equipment, clean and disinfect it. If there is anything missing, call the supplier immediately to send it over. Elena, let's study the surgical plan together. We must ensure the success of the surgery this afternoon without any mistakes. Private clinics are everywhere here, with a well-developed medical network. Iris Clinic has also signed cooperation agreements with several suppliers, all of which are monthly payments. Anything needed can be provided in a timely manner." Eva hurriedly went. The Iris Clinic has also undergone several appendectomy surgeries before, and Eva also serves as a touring nurse, familiar with the equipment required for the surgery. Zhou Qiao took a few steps forward and closed the door. Elena was surprised and quickly said, "Didn't we discuss the surgical plan in drill steps? Joe, I can be an instrument nurse. Now we're ready to discuss it. Joe, let's be serious. The patient's surgery is important. Don't worry, I have a sense of propriety. Also, you can help me adjust to my best state and perform exceptionally well during surgery." "Really?" Elena was skeptical. Second floor, operating room. Eva was so busy that she was sweating profusely, and then she saw Zhou Qiao and Elena both sweating profusely coming up to help. "Did you discuss the surgical plan so quickly?" Eva was surprised and glanced at the wall clock, thinking to herself, "It's only been 10 minutes. Elena stole a glance at Zhou Qiao and couldn't help but chuckle. Zhou Qiao quickly said in a serious tone, "We have already discussed it. After all, it is a very simple surgery. We have made some detailed notes and contingency plans for unexpected situations." He secretly gave Elena a glare. However, Elena is really good. He has already redeemed his master-level appendectomy. About half an hour later, the operating room was tidy up, the equipment was normal, and there were no shortage of instruments and consumables. After the cleaning work was completed, the room began to be disinfected, and the three of them walked out. Elena smiled lightly and pulled Ava out to buy food. Because he will have breakfast later, Mr. and Mrs. Weston estimate that they will be back, and the surgery will start soon. "Joe, what do you want to eat?" Elena asked. Zhou Qiao said, "Just like you." "Okay." Elena smiled knowingly, with two cute dimples appearing on her fair cheeks. Her sweet smile was so intoxicating. Ava gave them a skeptical glance again, feeling something was wrong. Zhou Qiao returned to the consultation room and began to carefully understand the feeling of being possessed by master-level medical skills. It's not just that a lot of experiential knowledge has been added out of thin air in the mind, but the entire body, especially the hands, has been synchronously enhanced, so there won't be a problem of only knowledge and not being able to operate. He spread his hands flat on his chest, moved his 10 fingers, and found that he was exceptionally agile, able to perform many movements that he could not have done before. The system is really amazing. What exactly is it? Anyway, Zhou Qiao thinks the system has strong capabilities, such as the inpatient doctor certificate he previously redeemed. Before the patient arrived this morning, he called to check and found that it can really be found in government agencies, not just a certificate. But all the complete set of information is complete, legal, and compliant. It's really difficult to be a doctor in the United States, especially when he comes from abroad. Usually, one needs to pass the USMLESTPE1, USML Step 2, CSA, and then undergo ECFMG certification for domestic degrees, to see if there are any counterfeits. Finally, one will receive an ECFMG certificate before they can participate in the U.S. residency medical match. However, not everyone can immediately access match. It takes time and luck. And these are all in pure English. Although Zhou Qiao's level has passed the CT.6, he really doesn't have an advantage. Resident doctors are like this, let alone attending doctors. Applying for an interview would cost thousands of dollars, and Zhou Qiao's background, autobiography, recommendation letter, research results, and so on do not have any advantages. To be honest, these are more difficult than exams. Because exams are in one's own hands, as long as there is effort, there will be rewards, which is relatively fair. However, both the application and match are in the hands of others. I understand everything I know. If we really follow the procedure, Zhou Qiao doesn't know when he can get his license. But now, with the system, everything becomes simple. Perhaps this is a reward from heaven for his 10 years of hard study and excellent character. Okay, Zhou Qiao admits that no one is perfect, and he does have a big flaw, which is his lack of color. On the surface, it looks pure, but in reality, it's a wild horse in the heart. Perhaps it was because of this that it matched with an unorthodox system. For those who aspire to make the world disease-free, they may be matched with a sophisticated medical system that is both legitimate and sophisticated. Zhou Qiao feels that this system is quite good. As long as it exists, it would be great. How many people can there be in a system among the billions of people on Earth? Picking around, still being a human. Do you have any tickets? End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Surgical Procedures Without Anesthesiologists. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Surgical Procedures Without Anesthesiologists. Chapter 6 has been blocked and efforts are being made to modify and unblock it. Zhou Qiao sat in the consultation room, constantly recalling the relevant medical knowledge and experience of appendicitis surgery in his mind. The master-level appendectomy he exchanged, which includes laparoscopy and traditional open surgery, is a comprehensive gift package and very cost-effective. After all, this is a total of 15 medical mystery points exchanged. The healing ointment before was a magical item with only 5 medical secrets. Now there are 15 medical mysteries, including knowledge and experience, which are naturally remarkable. As for ordinary ointments, it is estimated that 0.01 medical knowledge points are not worth it. How can something that can be bought for a few yuan be valuable? I was careless before, there's no anesthesiologist. Zhou Qiao suddenly thought of a fatal problem. Without an anesthesiologist, many surgeries, especially those that require general anesthesia, cannot be performed by San Xiao at all. Forcefully doing so is not compliant and can easily lead to accidents. Unfortunately, laparoscopic appendectomy requires general anesthesia. Rent an anesthesiologist outside. Without a monthly settlement agreement, Zhou Qiao cannot withdraw this money. Additionally, anesthesiologists usually need to make an appointment in advance, and now that surgery is imminent, there is no time. So, Zhou Qiao decided to choose an appendectomy procedure that did not require an anesthesiologist from this comprehensive gift package. That's it, local anesthesia. Many local anesthetics do not require the presence of a dedicated anesthesiologist, and the chief surgeon can handle them themselves. Although this technique is not widely used nowadays, its effectiveness and fewer side effects are still highly valued by many grassroots doctors. It does not affect the function and vital signs of important organs, has almost no complications after anesthesia, and does not require important monitoring equipment. In addition, for patients with poor general conditions, older age, or severe cardiopulmonary dysfunction, it is safer than other anesthesia methods and is less likely to cause blood pressure fluctuations and anesthesia accidents. The only thing to consider is the assessment of the degree of appendicitis in patients. Mr. Weston is not over 65 years old and his body is usually fine. Although he has a slightly higher fever, based on Zhou Qiao's decades of master-level experience, using local anesthesia can be done. It would be even better if we could exchange it for the perfect level, but time is too rushed and there is not enough medical knowledge. We need to work harder. Elena and Eva held hands and bounced back. Still, there are hamburgers, French fries, coffee, and black tea coming and going. Joe, today we're going in and out for a promotion where hamburgers and drinks are super discounted, so I bought 3 cups of coffee. You'll have to drink a little more later to avoid feeling lethargic during the surgery, Elena said. Eva. Did you not sleep well last night? Zhou Qiao waved his hand and said, I have plenty of energy. He secretly gave Elena a glare. Elena shrugged and said to herself, You worked so hard last night and had another one in the morning. Are you really energetic? I'm so tired that I can't resist not drinking coffee. If there's an accident during the surgery, the sign of the Iris Clinic will be ruined. Elena picked up her coffee and sipped it in small sips. She didn't apply any makeup, her skin was naturally snow-white, but her red lips were spotless and rosy, exceptionally delicate. Zhou Qiao also remembered the difference between the sisters, that is, Elena likes coffee, while Eva likes black tea. Joe, how do we do the surgery later? We don't have an anesthesiologist yet. Eva asked. The anesthesiologist at the clinic ran away. She just asked Elena on the way, how was the surgical plan determined? Elena hesitated and always changed the topic, so worried Eva directly asked Zhou Qiao. Zhou Qiao smiled and said, after discussing with Elena, we have decided to undergo appendectomy under local anesthesia without the need for a professional anesthesiologist present. Elena shrugged her shoulders, drank coffee, and made a face at Eva with her head tilted. I told you a long time ago that Joe will have a way, why don't you believe it? Eva. How do you feel like my sister admires Zhou Qiao very much now? Do you have a brainless feeling of supporting him? Zhou Qiao actually doesn't like to eat hamburgers. Eating these every day makes him feel nauseous. Fortunately, with Elena as an appetizer, it can be adjusted. With her beautiful appearance, she killed the hamburger 3 times, and then Zhou Qiao thought to herself. When she was a bit free, mainly because she had some money, she would buy some ingredients to show off and invite Elena and Eva, these 2 little babies, to taste Chinese cuisine. In no time, Mr. and Mrs. Weston returned. The inspection report had not been faxed yet, and Elena went to call to urge it. Within 5 minutes, the fax machine started to beep. Zhou Qiao flipped through the report and found that the white blood cells in the blood routine exceeded the limit, but it was not too high. Ultrasound shows enlarged appendix and surrounding abscess. Abdominal CT shows no obvious abnormalities in other areas. Consistent with the judgment made during physical examination, it is undoubtedly acute appendicitis. This was diagnosed by Zhou Qiaoben based on his own level, without the help of the system, and a slight sense of achievement couldn't help but feel in his heart. He smiled at the corners of his mouth and confidently said, "Mr. and Mrs. Weston, let's start the surgery right away. The earlier the surgery, the earlier the pain will be relieved. If it takes too long, other lesions may occur. For example, there may be mass formation, worsening inflammation, and widespread adhesions in the abdominal cavity." Mr. Weston nodded. He had been tinkering for so long, and the pain was already unbearable. Preoperative preparation, intramuscular injection of 10 mg of diazepam and 0.5 mg of atropine, disinfection of surgical field skin, and laying of sterile drapes. Choose a supine position, take the 8th needle, and infiltrate the skin and subcutaneous area with 1% lidocaine solution along the incision. The puncture point is the most obvious site of appendiceal tenderness. The local anesthesia infiltration zone is 10 cm long and 5 cm wide, with a dosage of 20 ml. Pierce the skin branch of the anesthesia nerve from the McDonald point. Zhou Qiao was shocked to find that this master-level appendectomy skill was indeed not something he could do. He hardly needed any thinking or deliberate control, and instinctively completed various complex operations with both hands. And every detail is particularly well done. If you record a video, it is definitely a teaching video with a ceiling level. Local anesthesia is completed, the right lower abdominal incision is made, the appendix is searched for, the mesentery is treated, the appendix and cecum are protected, purse-string suture is performed, the appendix root is ligated, the appendix is cut off, the residual end of the appendix is treated, the residual end of the appendix is embedded, the mesentery is covered, and the abdomen is closed. The whole process was completed in one go. Zhou Qiao flipped his hands and saw Elena and Ava, the twin sisters, dazzled. As for Mr. Weston, he was very nervous because of his clear consciousness. "Dr. Zhou, may I ask if the surgery has started? How long will it take?" Mr. Weston frequently looked at the wall clock. Although it had only been 7 or 8 minutes, Mr. Weston felt like 5 or 6 years had passed, and he felt like he couldn't bear it. Zhou Qiao smiled slightly and said, "It's already done." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Unbelievable. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Unbelievable. What, this is done? Mr. Weston was shocked inexplicably. "Well," Zhou Qiao nodded and said, "you get out of bed and take a walk." Mr. Weston was skeptical. Just after the surgery, he got out of bed. Young Dr. Zhou is probably joking, isn't he? Zhou Qiao smiled and said, "It's okay. The surgery went smoothly and you're in good condition. You can get out of bed and move a little, which is beneficial for the early recovery of intestinal function and the healing of the incision. It can also reduce the chances of postoperative intestinal paralysis and adhesions." "Oh, I'll give it a try." Mr. Weston stood up trembling, trying to take a step. Sure enough. Shocked again. This is the effectiveness of local anesthesia for appendectomy. Of course, this surgical approach also has many drawbacks, such as excessive dosage of medication for obese patients, poor anesthesia effect, poor incision exposure, limited anesthesia scope in surgical operations, and not suitable for more complex exploration. The chief surgeon needs to be experienced and find it in the shortest possible time. This is because the duration of local anesthesia is limited, unlike general anesthesia, which can last for several hours. In addition, general anesthesia surgery can provide a better surgical experience for patients after falling asleep. Nowadays, anesthesia technology is advanced, and the side effects are already very small. There is another reason why laparoscopic appendectomy is not very expensive compared to local anesthesia resection. Of course, laparoscopy also has its advantages, and there is a reason why it is expensive. The surgery ended so quickly, which not only shocked Mr. Weston, but also surprised the touring nurse Eva and the equipment nurse Elena. It was really Zhou Qiao's performance that was too dazzling, far exceeding their expectations. Surprisingly, it was completed in less than 10 minutes, and the skills were so skilled. No, it should be said to be exquisite. Watching him perform surgery is like appreciating top artists performing their unique skills, which is pleasing to the eye. The technique is close to the Tao, roughly speaking, of Zhou Qiao's situation. In fact, if Zhou Qiao knew their thoughts, he would definitely humbly wave his hand. What, I still have perfect level skills that haven't been exchanged. The cut appendix is placed on a stainless steel plate, necrotic and purulent, with solid evidence like a mountain of evidence. It was really done, not pretended to be fooled. A while ago, there was news about a doctor who charged a patient an expensive stent fee but didn't include it. The patient's condition worsened and they went to the imperial capital for examination, only then did they discover the truth. The doctor was probably not skilled and uncertain, but he insisted on saving face, so he covered it up. After the incident, he naturally fell into disrepute. Zhou Qiao doesn't do such a thing. If I really can't do it, I'll transfer to the University of California Medical Center. Face is small, the safety of the patient is the most important thing. Elena's beautiful blue eyes sprouted endless little stars, looking at her man with admiration and obsession on her face. Unfortunately, the upper limit of her favorability is only 100, otherwise she would still be able to rise. In addition, she felt that she also had credit for it. For the first time, she felt that she might really be Zhou's lucky goddess, able to help him adjust to the best surgical state. It was simply amazing. Well, before every surgery in the future, I can do it. However, the surgery is usually done in broad daylight and it's easy for people to notice. Elena's pretty face blushed slightly as she remembered this, while Eva beside her curiously stared at her. Mr. Weston was restless in the operating room, and Mrs. Weston in the hallway outside was no exception, walking back and forth like ants on a hot pot. Looking at the empty iris clinic, with only 3 small ones entering the operating room and no one left behind outside, Mrs. Weston's mood suddenly became particularly anxious. The 3 young people combined are not as old as me, shouldn't there be any accidents? Is it really a wise choice to undergo surgery at the iris clinic? What should I do if something happens to Walid? Mrs. Weston became more and more afraid as she thought, and tears streamed down her face. She remembered that since her husband fell ill last night and came for surgery today, without even telling her only son, she couldn't help but call her son who lived in Santa Clara Valley. Her son Brian was stunned upon hearing this. What? You actually had surgery at the Iris Clinic? I just heard from a friend this morning that after Anna's death, her inheritance was given to a young nephew from China. Now there seems to be only 1 young doctor and 2 young nurses in the clinic. Everyone is saying that the former Iris Clinic is probably going to become history. You guys went there for surgery, did you make a mistake? Brian was speechless. Mrs. Weston cried and said, but it's already inside. I guess we've already started cutting. Stop right away. I'll go over right away, don't worry, I'll recommend a great doctor to you. Brian roared over the phone. At this moment, the door to the operating room opened, and Mr. Weston slowly walked out with the help of Zhou Qiao and Elena. Eva is cleaning up the mess from behind. Mrs. Weston was stunned, her phone almost slipped. Mom, are you okay? What happened? On the other end of the phone, Brian felt something was wrong and kept asking. Mr. Weston smiled slightly and extended his arms to his wife, saying, I'm doing well. Dr. Zhou has a high level of expertise and the surgery was very successful. If the patient speaks up in person, the effect will be even stronger than if the doctor reports good news. Mrs. Weston quickly rushed towards her husband, but as she approached, she abruptly stopped and gave her husband a gentle hug. She knew that she had a strong physique, and her husband had just undergone surgery. He was weak and couldn't withstand bumps. Immediately, she let go of her husband and jumped up, shouting happily like a child. "Brian, do you know that your dad's surgery has already been completed? It's already successful. It's so fast, I haven't even realized it yet, it's like dreaming." "Well, Brian, we're doing well, you don't have to come over anymore." On the other end of the phone, Brian said, He resolutely decided to take a leave and drive back, despite being busy with an important task at the moment. Work, where is the health of an old father important? After all, Mr. Weston has just completed surgery and can only move a little. He still needs to stay in bed, so Zhou Qiao arranged for him to be in a double-room ward. Mrs. Weston can conveniently stay here at night and sleep in another bed. In fact, the Iris Clinic only has 3 wards, 1 3-bedroom, 1 2-bedroom, and 1 single VIP room, totaling 6 beds. Mr. Weston will be hospitalized here for approximately 5 to 10 days, depending on his recovery. Santa Clara Valley is located in Santa Clara County in the southern part of the San Francisco Bay Area. Although San Francisco is not large, the Bay Area is quite large. Santa Clara Valley is 50 miles away from San Francisco and takes an hour to an hour and a half by car. Speaking of this name, it may be unfamiliar to everyone, but it also has a very loud name, called Silicon Valley. Brian contacted his personal Dr. Dean by phone before returning home. Dean is in his 40s and is very famous. Many executives from large companies, such as Google, Facebook, Apple, Intel, and so on, have approached him for treatment. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Make a big profit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 10. Elderly living alone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Elderly living alone. Thank you for the 1000 point coin reward from Bookfriend 20220522001236052. The next day, both Zhou Qiao and Elena kept yawning and drinking coffee didn't work. Ava was very curious and kept staring at Elena and Zhou Qiao, asking, "What did you do at night? Didn't you even sleep?" Zhou Qiao was suddenly embarrassed. He scratched his hair and ears with great force. Taking advantage of this opportunity to cover up, his mind was spinning and he quickly found an excuse. "It's like this, isn't this clinic open yet? I deeply feel that my medical skills are not proficient and I'm afraid it will affect my patient's condition, so I can't sleep at night. I studied medical books last night and didn't go to bed until after 3 a.m. Ava's eyes lit up and she gave Zhou Qiao a thumbs up, praising, "You're such a good person. If I had studied like you before, I probably would have gone to college long ago." Zhou Qiao sneered and said, "Education in the United States is different. You are happy education, while China is very competitive. It's common to spend time in high school." Eva shrugged and looked at Elena, "And you? You won't tell me, are you also learning about nursing?" As twins, how could Eva not know Elena's abilities? It's impossible for someone like Joe to focus on studying hard. Elena made a face and said, "I'm just suffering from pure insomnia. Maybe I'm also worried about the future of the clinic. I don't know where to go in the future, do I? Well, I'm not just lying down. I've also read a book. Although it's not as long as Joe, I've also learned new nursing knowledge." She cheered from the depths of her heart for the reason Zhou Qiao had found. "So I drew inspiration from it." "Sure enough," choked Ava. Ava. The white girl with bright eyes and white teeth couldn't help but mutter, why are you all so ambitious? It seems like I'm heartless. She felt that as a member of the clinic, she should also contribute to the clinic. Well, we also need to work hard to learn. Elena, accompany me to the library at noon to borrow some professional books. I can't be left behind by you. Eva said. Okay. Elena and Zhou Qiao exchanged a glance and smiled knowingly while Eva was brewing black tea. The summer in San Francisco is a typical, cool summer Mediterranean-style climate, which is relatively cool and rarely rains. Contrary to domestic cities, the rainy season often occurs in winter and spring. Although the weather was nice, one morning, not a single patient came to their door, and there was no phone appointment, which made Zhou Qiao suspect that the phone had been suspended due to unpaid bills. But obviously not. Because in no time, he received a call from Mrs. Weston. Mrs. Weston was very polite and called specifically to apologize to Zhou Qiao. She said that she had undergone a check-up at Dean's clinic, and a well-known Dean's doctor praised Zhou Qiao's medical skills. She and her husband both apologize for their son's behavior yesterday and hope that Zhou Qiao will not take it to heart. How could Zhou Qiao be angry? It can be said that this is human nature, and Brian is so concerned about Mr. Weston's condition that he is a very filial and good son, happy for them to have such a good son. Zhou Qiao also specifically told Mrs. Weston that filial piety is an excellent quality in China, ranking first. In ancient times, acts of filial piety like her son would also receive praise from the government. If the reputation spreads, one will still be elected as an official. Anyway, it's just a rainbow fart. Mrs. Weston listened happily on the other end of the phone. There's no way, the clinic focuses on returning customers, and it's essential to establish a good relationship with patients. The only drawback is that Zhou Qiao's English is very ordinary and he doesn't know how to translate filial piety comes first in order to perfectly express that meaning. Fortunately, Mrs. Weston can understand. After lunch, Ava really took Elena to the library to borrow books. Elena didn't actually want to go, thinking that if Ava left, wouldn't she have the chance to be alone with Zhou Qiao? But I can't resist my sister. Elena could only blink at Zhou Qiao and ask, Zhou, are you going? Zhou Qiao said, I'd better stay at the clinic. What if a patient comes to my door? Although he also really wants to go. I never had a romantic relationship in school before, and my most fantastical thing was reading books with my girlfriend in the library. It was such a sweet and affectionate scene. Now, there are two white little sisters in front of him. Unfortunately, he has to stay alone in the clinic for work. All right. Let's go then. Don't worry, we'll come back as soon as possible. Elena and Eva waved their hands, holding hands and bouncing out. Pay attention to safety. Zhou Qiao couldn't help but remind him from behind. At around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a patient with a cold and fever that Zhou Qiao had been eagerly anticipating finally arrived. She is a solitary old lady named Kathy, in her 70s, with a slow gait. She used to be a client of the Iris Clinic. Zhou Qiao helped the old man sit down and after learning about his condition, he asked Ava to come and draw blood, and sent the blood sample to the testing company for testing as soon as possible. Due to the elderly person's slightly high body temperature, Zhou Qiao instructed Elena to give the elderly person a shot of fever-reducing medicine first, rest for a while, and then the elderly person's spirit improved slightly. Zhou Qiao and Elena chatted with the elderly person to further understand her family situation. The elderly person has never been married in their lifetime, so they have no children. They fall ill at home, no one brings tea or water, and no one even knows. She struggled to get out of bed after carrying the burden at home for a day and a night, feeling that she might die in bed. She leaned on her cane and arrived at the Iris Clinic. She can't afford to call an ambulance. Many people in the United States would rather die than call for an ambulance. Of course, this is a joke, and when I really need it, I will still cry out in pain. Kathy's home is not far from here, only 400 to 500 meters, but with such a short distance, she walked for almost half an hour. When they arrived, the whole person felt exhausted. Zhou Qiao took a piece of paper and wrote the clinic's phone number on it with a pen. The font was very large, so he was afraid that the elderly might not be able to see it clearly. If you need anything in the future, just call the clinic's phone number directly, and we will come to your door for treatment. Due to the urgency of taking over the clinic and also because he didn't have the money, he hasn't printed a business card yet. Additionally, even if he does, it may not be suitable for the elderly. Because most elderly people have dim eyes and the font on business cards is too small. He thought he could print special business cards specifically for the elderly. After all, there are still quite a few elderly residents in the surrounding area, which is also a potential customer group. Although Kathy is feeling unwell, she speaks a lot. It's probably been a long time since she talked to anyone, and no one would sit down and talk to her so attentively like Zhou Qiao and Elena. End of this chapter.